healers, and I would just like to introduce our people to my first guest, Michael Geary.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
Michael Geary is a life coach, author, speaker, and a Vedic astrologer. I think most of all, an educator and inspirator. And his work can be found on michaelgeary.co.uk. Michael offers readings and consultations in person or via Skype using a person's astrological chart. Now, we have some questions about this, and without further ado, I'd say let's just jump in. I've noted a few of those down, so I may look like I'm reading from a script, but this is quite natural and quite spontaneous, to be honest with everyone. But tell me a little bit about your work in a nutshell, if you will.
Okay, well, my work in a nutshell, it's all about helping people realize their latent potential and create a life of meaning and purpose that's authentic to them. And that comes out of my years of pursuing, it sounds like a grand way of saying it, enlightenment, spiritual realization, which goes way back to my childhood. I spent my early years as a monk, spending some of that time in India, and pursuing an understanding of the self. What are we all about? What are we here? You know, all the big questions that we all have. How can I live a meaningful life that's useful and purposeful, not just to me, but to other people? And how can I have fun along the way? So in a way, my work is about that. It's about coming and helping people, supporting people to help them realize the treasure that exists within them that they maybe haven't yet found, or that they intuitively know is there, but they're having a hard time bringing out. And that's what the coaching does, and that's the use of the charts gives me a map to understand that and to point that out, and then we're off and running. It's always a conversation with them.
Yeah, cool. I know that way back in the late 90s, you created a website called panchang.com, and it is very rich in all sorts of features and scientifically. Seems to be using Vedic astrology. Now, do you see Vedic astrology as a science? How do you?
Yeah, I'd say that Vedic astrology is a science in the classical scientific way, meaning that if I have an experiment and I achieve a certain outcome from the experiment, I should be able to give you the same tools for that experiment, and you get the same result. So it's replicable. That's the kind of thing that I think science is all about. And Vedic astrology is a science because it's not about the planets exerting some magnetic influence on our lives, and we have no free will or control over what we do, but it's about understanding the archetypes and the big themes of reality that exist within us. So in other words, everyone's their own little universe. And what the sages of India did was they gave us a language in Vedic astrology that helps us understand very deeply each individual universe. How is a person built? What are the challenges that they have? What are the strengths that they have? And maybe where are they weak? And how can we work with that to compensate for those weaknesses, maximize the strengths, and actually achieve a really good outcome? So if I look at a chart, if I look at one person's chart and one person's chart is similar to another person's chart, they will have certain similar themes. They will have certain, perhaps, similar challenges. And in that sense, yes, it's scientific, but it's also an art. It's also kind of, you could kind of say, well, is music scientific? Well, yes, music is scientific because we use notes and we have a formula and everybody plays in a certain way, but it becomes an art when it comes into the hand of, somebody who really knows how to play.
The interpretation.
Where the music is integrated into the practitioner, into the musician. So where there's no distinction between the instrument and the musician, that's when beauty really happens. So in the same way, when you really apply yourself to understanding the science of Vedic astrology and the symbols go in and they're operating at a certain kind of level within you, then it just becomes a language. And that's where I think the magic happens when I'm working with clients.
Cool. Well, and that's exactly what I hear from clients that I've spoken with, or some of the testimonials on your website, michaelgeary.co.uk. And by the way, I'll post that link to your website right below this video. But a big theme in your work is the use of Vedic symbolism, I hear, and your ability to explain them in a language that's easy to understand for people that live not 5,000 years ago, but that live now. And so how do you do that?
Well, the symbolism, I explain it as kind of an expression of Jungian archetypes. The psychologist Jung, the early 20th century psychologist Jung, who was a student of Freud and a contemporary of Freud, he postulated that deep within all of us are certain big themes that exist. So that, for instance, let's say the theme of the father. And the theme of the father is symbolized by authority, discipline, support, care, protection, this kind of idea. So everyone has some kind of father figure within them. In in New Age circles, we talk about the child within, we talk about the mother within, or the father within. So Jungian archetypes address this, and they talk about this. And so what Vedic astrology does is it gives us a language of these symbols. And it tells us, it gives hint to, well, how are these symbols operating in an individual? Does an individual, for instance, have a strong sense of self? Does an individual have a strong sense of confidence? And that might be represented by the father archetype within them. And has the father been really helpful and supportive to them? Have they been empowered by father figures? Or have they been diminished by father figures? And if they have, well, that's what we want to work on.
Yeah.
We want to help people overcome that. So Jung talked about, well, he made a comment that you can know more about a person through their astrological chart than you can through a stethoscope. And so he actually used astrology. He studied mandalas. Astrology is just a different type of symbol system or of mandalas.
Yeah.
To kind of meditate on his own life and to meditate on the lives of his clients. So the symbols that we use give us the language to understand people, and with that language, we can help them discover more about themselves.
Really interesting, I find. I mean, I love the Vedic symbolism and the mandalas that you just mentioned. And obviously also understanding and realizing their ancient origins. But what makes them so valuable in today's society, where everything needs to be proven scientifically by measuring results, etc., data? So how do you see that?
Well, it's interesting because I just did a chart for a guy who is a scientist. His new girlfriend came to me and she said, hey, can you do a compatibility chart? Can you look and see how we might get along? Where are the things we're going to connect with, and where are the things that might be challenging to us? So I did his chart, and he wasn't in the room, but of course we recorded it, and he got a chance to listen to the recording afterwards. And he wrote back to me and he said it was scarily accurate. He said he felt disconcerted by the acuity of the way in which I described his personality. And so we began this discussion about symbolism versus Enlightenment thinking, where everything has to be measured and quantified empirically. So I think there's a lot of value that's come out of that type of thinking, and it's brought us a lot of benefit. You and I are talking over the internet now, and that's part of the result of Enlightenment thinking, in a sense. All the technology that's been developed out of the area of science, and I have a great respect for science, but also on the other hand, you've got the understanding of the individual. So we live a life of symbols. our language, for instance, how we're communicating with each other is just a type of symbolism.
Yes.
And, so if I say water, the word water represents water, but it's not going to satisfy or quench your thirst.
Well, it puts water in my mouth.
It does, right. It makes you thirsty. Wait a second. Let me have a drink. So, the symbol itself, you could argue in modern society, we're kind of losing a little bit the importance of symbolism. If I get a little philosophical, we could talk about postmodernist thinking and the reductionism that comes along with just breaking everything down into little component parts so that we can measure and control it or understand it. So I think that if we can reconnect with the symbolism that exists within us, which is in nature, within ourselves, we can find new ways of self-discovery. And that's what Vedic astrology really is all about, understanding ourselves, giving us a language to go deep within the consciousness, deep within our state of beingness to bring the best of us out. So for those who are interested, I could recommend a really good book by a guy named Ian McGilchrist called The Master and His Emissary. And McGilchrist is a professor of neurology. So he's basically studied the brain, and in the book he talks about left brain and right brain reality. And the left brain, which is what our society has predominantly become, is an analytical, discursive, debative kind of society where we're concerned about numbers and measurement. The right brain is all about experience, and it's all about opening up to the wonder of life. And he explains in the book that the information that we get, whatever new experience we have, comes to us through the right brain, and then once we have the experience, it's passed to the left brain and categorized so that we can understand that experience. So in one way, when we have a society which is too left brain oriented, we become smaller and smaller in terms of our scope of discovery and our sense of wonder, perhaps. We only go to the things that we know. We're not open to the idea of, what might be. Like a child is. A child is very learning and in a place of developing the right brain so that it can build up a left brain library. So my argument that Vedic astrology and other symbol systems like it has a place in modern society is echoed in McGilchrist's book, where he says that there is the need in our modern society to bring more of a harmony where both sides of the brain hemisphere are working together to create what you might call the holistic and integrated human being. Right. So, that's probably
we'll make sure to
too much information, but
we'll post some information about that book below the video as well.
Okay,
so
it's a great book. It really. It's a little bit. I find I'm not a medical guy, so it takes a little bit of effort up front to understand the different component parts of the brain. But once you do, it becomes very, very interesting, deeply philosophical. I think it's a masterpiece, actually.
Right. Well, I do love to read, ancient texts, as the Bhagavad Gita and other similar beautiful texts about spirituality and enlightenment, as you just earlier mentioned. And what I often find, though, is that I enter a world of symbolism and ideas and concepts that I find all very wonderful. But then when I close the book, or when I receive a reading or a Vedic chart or any chart, how do we bring that into like practical tools and steps that I can actually use in my day-to-day life as a husband, as a father, as an employee or an employer? That's something that I always find quite hard to bridge.
I think it's actually one of the things that I've really set out to do in my work and to focus on in my work with people. Panchang.com is a great example of that, I think. Where we took all this information, all this Vedic information, which, for instance, tells us that if you do the right thing at the right time, you get a better result, all things being equal. Yeah. Because in Vedic thinking, time has quality. In other words, it's not just an abstract notion of tick tock, tick tock. We're passing time or we're marking time, but we're living in time, and our reality is defined by time and space. So there's a whole kind of background on this. I won't go into it, but we took all that information and we said, okay, well, how can this benefit people? Are we going to start giving classes on how people can start to become Vedic practitioners and Brahmins and all this stuff? And no, we don't want to go there, because we have our own society. Our society and our reality are very legitimate and for all kinds of good reasons. So I thought, but we can benefit our current society with this knowledge. So we created a diary. It's basically, Panchang.com is a planner. So you have a diary, you can look into the future, you can see the quality of a day, you can see the quality of a time, and you can align your important actions, the actions that really, really matter, actions that you could say are milestone activities, to really good qualities of time to get really good results. So that's one practical example. In work with clients, you have to maybe perhaps accept the theory that I can look at a chart and I can see their strengths, weaknesses, and challenges, and also look at where they are in the different life cycles that they're in. Because in Vedic astrology, there's the idea that we all have seasons that we go through. And if you're old enough, as you can tell I am, you have experienced that there are some good periods in your life and some difficult periods in your life, and then some good periods in your life, and that kind of goes like waves. So if you know what that is, you can plan accordingly. And with that information and working with the client, what I try to do is give them the know-how to make good choices. So it's all about understanding what are the possibilities, what are the challenges that they might confront, but what are also the treasures that lie ahead. And with the right choices, then they can get really the best possible results. So sometimes, for instance, a client will come to me and go, I'd like to become a wealthy person.
Yeah.
And I'll look at, let's say, I'm really simplifying it, because actually I don't think anybody's actually come and said that to me, but it's more like, well, I have some money problems. When are they going to go away? So I look at the chart, and the chart gives me information that helps create within them a balanced, natural set of expectations. Am I going to become a very wealthy person? Does my chart symbolize the life of a wealthy person? Maybe not financially, but it might be in other areas. So if I can work with the client to help them discover those areas of treasure that exist within them, it might not be a financial treasure, but it might be a creative treasure. Right, it might be a relationship treasure. It might be working in education. It might be working in social work and so on. So, those are a couple of examples, and there are so many more. Everything is bespoke or custom to the individual. I would say that there's never really been a consultation which is a replica of another consultation, because right, each one of us is a unique person. So I try to create the tools that help people make those good choices.
All right, well, that's very interesting, and it gives me an idea to ask you, maybe unspoken question, to put it that way. But could you maybe describe a little bit the process of how a consultation works from start, middle, and finish?
Yeah, well, the first thing I need is their person's date, place, and time of birth as accurately as they might have it, assuming that they have it, and we have ways of working around it if they don't have the right time or the accurate time. But assuming that they have it, what I do is I do the chart, I study it, and I prepare for the session, and we get together on Skype or in person, and I introduce them to the basic concepts around how we're going to work. What is the you could almost maybe call it the pedigree of this knowledge. Where does it come from? Vedic astrology comes from the same set of books that gave us yoga, and that gave us meditation, and that gave us the ideas of enlightenment. And actually everything in Vedic astrology ultimately is aimed at individual enlightenment. So I talk a little bit about that, get a little bit philosophical, and then I talk about, well, what they're going to expect in a consultation, and I kind of take them through how the flow of the dialogue is going to go. And then, as you can tell through this interview, I don't have any problem with words. So I tell them that I'm going to be doing most of the talking.
Yeah. Okay.
But that it's very much a dialogue.
It's good to establish that up front.
It's
Yeah,
good
sure.
to establish. Well, that's what they're paying me
And is
for.
this a one-off session, or is there a follow-up? How does it fit in a person's life?
I do a lot of one-off sessions, but I also do a great deal of regular ongoing sessions. I gear that to the needs of the individual. I work with clients that I've been seeing now for over 25 years, and they keep coming back to me.
Right.
Sometimes they'll come back to me once a year. They'll say, hey, Michael, it's time for a top-up, and I want to get a kind of a picture on, on what's ahead. Sometimes they'll call me up and say, look, I'm in a crisis, and I need to have a little bit of objective guidance. And maybe you could say that that's really what I do. I'm a guide.
You mentioned something, you were doing a chart for a couple that was wanting to know if they were compatible, etc. So that's also something you do.
That's something I do. Another example is people call me up and they say, well, I'm hiring a new executive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is he going to work for me? Is he going to be a good fit for the team? There are other examples where people will say, well, I want to start a new business. What's a good time for me to start a new business? I had two ladies have a very good-sized, chic homewares business up in London. They sell in Harrods and all of that, and they were looking to expand their business. So I gave them advice on how they might go about that, and identified key areas of weakness that they needed to be aware of, and also then pointed out certain strengths and certain opportunities that they actually hadn't thought of. And the result of it was that they went off and got the venture capital that they needed to grow their business. Yeah. So it's really aimed at everyone's need. It's never formulaic. I'm a creative person, and I get a real kick out of the experience of working with people. I sometimes joke that, when I meet someone new, it's like opening a novel, and it's a whole new story. So I like to gear what I do for people, to that, and to make it really pertinent to them.
All right. So when you give advice to a person, do you actually say, well, don't marry this guy or girl, or do you give people
I don't, because I don't, because my job is not really to interfere in people's lives.
Right.
It's to support people in making good choices. And so I might, in a relationship dynamic, it's not about saying, oh, this is a very bad relationship. It's not like that. It's more about helping each partner have access to a deep understanding of who the other person is, and really so that they can appreciate them in a way perhaps that they might not have already appreciated them. Sometimes in relationships, I have a client right now who's going through some marital problems, and the dynamics of our work with her and her husband have been aimed at creating understanding and going beyond the hurt feelings and going beyond the memories of argument, to understand the value that exists deeply within them and why they got together in the first place, and to maybe encourage that if there's still the chance for that to be developed. So it covers a lot of different areas.
I know you've talked about enlightenment. You talk a lot about human potential. So can you explain, what do you mean by human potential?
Everybody likes to quote Einstein. I don't know if it's because of the hairdo or the equation, but he's obviously a great, genius of our time. And his comment is that, we're really only using 10% of our brain. and I would say that, I have a more holistic view of people. It's not about their brain, of course, that's part of it, but it's about their whole being. It's about their heart. It's about their inner spirit. It's about their moral and ethical fiber. It's about the fundamentals and principles that guide them in being the person that they are, and the lives that they're living. I would probably echo Einstein's idea that we're only realizing a very small percentage of ourselves. And that's where Vedic astrology comes out of that principle, comes out of that big idea that enlightenment is over here and it's something we should aim for. It's a grand ideal. It takes time to get there, but it's still something we should go for. If you can say that the enlightened person is someone who's perfectly in alignment with all of reality and all of existence, fully integrated within themselves, then that's 100% person. So then we could say, well, how many of us are operating at that level, and is there room to grow? And that's where Vedic astrology comes out of that principle, comes out of that big idea that enlightenment is over here, and it's something we should aim for. It's a grand ideal. It takes time to get there, but it's still something we should go for. If you can say that the enlightened person is someone who's perfectly in alignment with all of reality and all of existence, fully integrated within themselves, then that's 100% person. So then we could say, well, how many of us are operating at that level, and is there room to grow? So my work is about human potential. It's about looking at those areas where there is room to grow. And maybe sometimes I joke that I'm a little bit kind of like a midwife, where I help give birth to. Right. I know I don't look like a normal, but I help give birth. Yeah, don't be. I wouldn't go there. Although
I'm kidding.
I've got lots of daughters, so I know all about it. I think it's about helping people bring that out of themselves, and all of us have the experience of being able to see in each other the things that we need to work on.
Is that what you would define as being success? And maybe as a closing question I could put before you, is there a magic formula to success?
Self-knowledge would be the first thing that comes to my mind. I think that is what real success is all about. Self-knowledge and self-mastery. Are we going to define success as money? Money comes, money goes, for everybody. I think success is about being whole, loving, being loved, respecting, being respected, having meaningful place in the world, and constantly pursuing knowledge and wisdom and growth by interacting powerfully with other people, by respecting the world that we live in. I think that's what success is really all about.
Powerful, powerful. I think the topic of human potential and defining success is, enough material for another session, for multiple sessions, I believe, as a concurrent theme throughout. And I also know you mentioned something about a magic formula to success, or is there something you want to say about that?
A magic formula.
Because we all want that quick sort of fix.
Yeah, okay.
Assuming that there is one, but there may not be one, or it may be different than expected.
Well, I think it is. I think the kind of wisdom that I've gained from studying with masters in the past, and that I'm sharing through my work, would create an answer that people might not expect. In our culture, we like to hear that there's a get rich quick. In fact, I think there was a book written by a guy somewhere who said, "Okay, you can get rich quick." It's about self-knowledge and self-mastery, and that's a journey. that is an adventure. It's a type of discovery, and it takes time, and it doesn't necessarily come quickly. It's like cultivating something beautiful. If you walk into a garden that's really incredible, you look at the garden, and of course, you immediately want to say, "I want to have one of those at my house." Where I live. And so you'd like to mentally picture that perfect garden just magically manifesting in your backyard. But the practical reality of it is any gardener will tell you you're on your knees, your hands are in the dirt, and you're in the hot, and you're in the rain, and you're lifting, and there's effort involved.
Yeah.
So, self-knowledge and self-mastery has some of that. I suppose what I try to do in my work is make some of that heavy lifting go away. So I can, say, okay, I'm here to help. Here's the information. Let's go and build that beautiful garden.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. And I think that sums it up for today.
I think so, and I think maybe what I'd like from my side, I'm gonna do read my script here a little bit, and just read a quote that I think is really appropriate to understanding why symbolism that exists in Vedic astrology and in other wisdom traditions around the world could be really useful for us at this time in the world. I'm going to quote Erich Fromm, the social psychologist, who in 1964, he said, "Both dreams and myths are important communications from ourselves to ourselves. If we do not understand the language in which they're written, we miss a great deal of what we know and tell ourselves in those hours when we are not busy manipulating the outside world." So a lot of my work is actually aimed at this. We're so busy. I mean, does this look familiar? We're all busy now, and we're all busy manipulating the outside world, and it gives us a sense of power. I mean, even on my iPhone gives me a sense that I'm in control.
Yeah, manipulating.
Right? But in doing that, am I quietly listening to those messages that Fromm is talking about? So the Vedic astrology in the hands of someone like me allows the translation of those symbols into a language that we can become aware in our conscious selves about the deeper things that are working within us. And that's where the magic is, I think, in my work and in working with other people.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I know that you have a free guide available called Being Well, Doing Well. It's available for download on your website. People can sign up for that, so I'll make sure we'll put the details below this video. Is there anything else you want to say to close this session?
Yeah, I would say read the download. I think it gives some big ideas that people might find inspiring. And feel free to contact me and ask more questions, and keep on the path of self-discovery. You don't really have to go too far outside of what you already are. You just got to find that treasure within you. So I hope you find it.
Wise words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.